Are you in Texas or are you in California?
I'm in California. I'm in LA.
Oh, wow. How long have you lived in LA?
Probably about 12, 13 years. Before that, it was 40 years in Texas and 20 some years in Chicago area.
And how do you like LA?
I wonder why I never moved here a long time ago. Yeah, I love it.
Were you kind of coming out there a lot of times during the 80s a lot?
Well, I've always come out here to play, but I never really hung out. The funny thing was, every time I got off a plane, or even when we were touring, as soon as I put my feet on the ground out here, I just felt something. It felt like home. It's really weird. Maybe it was just because it's always moving and there might be an earthquake coming, but it's just, there's always been this thing about California. And the other thing is, when I was 6 years old, I was in first grade, and this boy named Jimmy Sexton, his name was Jimmy Sexton, and the teacher announced that Jimmy Sexton is going to move to Los Angeles. And everybody goes, oh, cool. Like, this is 1956. Okay, so all over the TV, who had TVs, if people had them, everything was California, the new place. Everybody's moving to California. It was the promised land. I mean, it was a big deal. It was all we heard of. And so even back in the 60s, if you came from California, you did it first. And everything started in California. And it's like this whole magical thing about it. And so I've always wanted to live here. And when I got here, it was everything that I imagined. And the other thing about it, too, is that here you can be whatever you fucking want to be and do whatever you want to do, and there's no judge. That is something that I've had been longing for my whole life, is to live in a place where nobody gave a fuck.
So you have Three Sides of One, the new album from King's X, coming out September 2nd.
Yeah, day before my birthday.
Yeah, I saw that, man. I was... And I mean, no offense by this, really, it's an absolute compliment. I saw something, I think, on Twitter, and you're like about to turn 72?
Yeah.
So that means you were like right at 40 when you were starting to make it, right?
Right. I was 38 when our first record came out. I was 44 when Dog Man came out. And I used to hanging out with Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains and those folks. And, they never really knew I was that much older than them, because we all look the same.
Right.
I look at pictures and I'm going, we're just a bunch of young 20-somethings here. When I look at the old pictures now, I never thought of it back then. But gosh, now I got a picture of me and Laney and Jeff Ament, and I look younger than them. And it was 1990. That's just really weird.
Yeah, I did see that story where I guess you were talking about how a lot of the grunge bands had listed King's X as an influence. I guess you guys really didn't face anything, right? From the 90s, you got bigger, right?
No. I mean, well, they still call us a hair metal band. We're still on Hair Nation. King's X was never accepted in that genre, the 90s. We're not even, in the history books, we're that 80s band, even though I think we're more like the 90s and 80s, because it was like 88 when we came out, so it was like a new era was just beginning. And we were we were a band that dropped detuned, and at that time, very few people were doing that or even thought about it. And I noticed that after our album came out, it inspired a lot of people to retune their guitars, and within about 2 years, the whole world was playing in drop D, and grunge was as big as it could get, and a lot of those bands were drop detuned. So, and a lot of the King's X fans that knew us would always say that they feel that a part of King's X is in grunge. And Jeff Ament will tell you the same thing. He says that grunge wouldn't have existed without King's X. And Dimebag told me also that Pantera wouldn't sound like Pantera without King's X. And so we just all listened to each other and pushed each other. Those are good old days.
Did you ever meet Chris Cornell?
Oh, he's a good friend of mine. We had a great conversation when they were making Super Unknown and King's X was making Dog Man. We laughed about how high we were always singing. And we both said, let's sing lower, because we're not supposed to scream like that. We can't do this forever. And we made a big joke about it. And we said, let's just croon and sing lower on our albums. And, there was Black Hole Sun and Black Flag, or Cigarettes and Flies in the Sky. So it's like me and him both just kind of made agreement to sing lower.
Did you guys play a lot of shows with them?
No. I don't think we ever did any shows with them. King's X never was paired up with grunge bands because we weren't considered cool.
Huh. I felt
Not
like,
from the bands, not from the bands themselves. It was just the way MTV and the media put everything out there. King's X played with more metal bands than anything, and being on Megaforce Records, we were in every metal magazine that there was. So if you didn't know much about King's X, you immediately considered us a metal band.
right.
I remember meeting Flea, and Flea says, "What's the name of your band?" I go, "King's X." He goes, "Oh, I don't listen to metal." But we kept talking, but he just looked at me and said, "I don't listen to metal. Like, I ain't into that stuff." And I'm thinking, but we're not metal. And I'm a huge Chili Peppers fan, so I was just, just hanging out.
And what brought you to Houston?
Well, we had been a band for 5 years, and starving to death in Springfield, Missouri, playing shitholes and very few people. And this record exec from Houston calls me and says, "Hey, Doug, we got this artist who's we need a band, a backup band for him, and we're gonna put some money behind him and put him on tour. Would you guys be the band, since you ain't not much happening with you right now?" And we go, "Okay." They wanted to sign us, but it was a Christian label, and we didn't want to be a Christian band. That was the last thing we wanted to be. So we just became the band of this guy named Morgan Cryer, and we went on a tour with them, actually. And they moved us to Texas. We did one tour with them in churches, and the churches would not allow him back if he didn't get another band, because that was 1985, and we rocked the fuck out of that church, and the kids went crazy, and the grown folks, oh, that wasn't cool. And they shut us down real quick. That was the 80s, where you couldn't even spin around on stage without them coming to pray the demons out of you. But we did that whole thing, Jim Baker. We played the Heritage Farm and all that stuff. It was eye-opening. We just saw the hypocrisy and all that religious aspect of that world, and we wanted out more than ever at that point. And so we left Morgan and found Sam Taylor, who worked with ZZ Top. And at that point, we got hooked up with a major record label and got signed, and the whole story after that.
I often wondered about that with the Christian connection, because it's funny. I used to just hear that. We'd hear that like, oh, they're a Christian band, but then it was like, no, they don't come off like a Christian band at all. But those are where those stories came from, is what you just said, or was there any kind of base at all?
That's where they came from, because we never set out to be that or do that or say anything about it. But back then, and even now, they want to categorize you. They listen to our lyrics. They're kind of spiritual. They're kind of religious sometimes, or they're kind of confusing. And so the media kept saying, "So what's the deal? What's the deal behind the lyrics?" We could have said we're Catholic and it would have been okay, but we said, we're Christians, and oh my God, the C word in the 80s was not cool in rock and roll. And that's why we just didn't want to even say it, because the bottom line was, we knew that if we said we were a Christian band, we couldn't be ourselves anymore. We couldn't do what we wanted to do and say what we wanted to say and be who we wanted to be. We knew that. We knew that we could probably be a big Christian band and make a lot of money and do that whole route, but we didn't believe in that shit. And that's why we got out of it, is because of all the hypocrisy that was in it amongst a lot of the music that was being played. We thought, we don't want to be like this. Let's go out here and just go out in the world and do what we do and make music. And we agreed that when we first became a band. We got together and I says, "Guys, we're not going to be a Christian band. We're not playing churches. We're not giving altar calls. We're going to go out and rock the fuck out of everybody like we've always wanted to do." And everybody said, "Yeah." So everything that came after that, the whole Christian thing, was other people spreading those little rumors, trying to put us in a category. And the Christian, I was told that King's X was a big argument amongst Christian youth groups, because these kids loved King's X because they thought we were Christian. And the pastors and other people would argue and go, well, maybe they're not. Maybe they don't do altar calls, so they can't be. And all that shit was going on in the Christian world, that's what we didn't want to be a part of, that whole judgmental bullshit. But like, again, Ty said, we could have went that route and played that game and been as big as Amy Grant, And then somehow somebody sees me drinking wine and my career is over, or find out I was gay, and actually that's what happened too. I remember when I kind of came out like quietly in a Christian magazine. I just said, what the fuck? Might as well just go for it. And boy, oh boy, when the Christian world found that, they took it and took all our records out of the Christian bookstores. Every one of them. We were banned from everywhere. And we went, yes, now we can go do what we want to do without this. And it worked out.
Did you notice a big drop in sales right at that moment?
Not one. Not one. And it goes to show you, just be yourself and do what you do and be honest. I think that's something that I believe that the people that really love King's X is our honesty. Even and if you call us out because you think we're being dishonest about something, I will deal with it and maybe agree and realize that maybe I'm not as perfect as I think I am, because nobody's perfect. So there's always room for improvement. And that's why I look at life. I'm not too old to learn something new. I'm not too old to tell somebody something they don't know.
And in Houston, did you, so I grew up in Dallas. Of course, it seems so backwards now, when I hear the stories coming out of Texas, but, man, it was really laid back at that time. Did you like living in Houston?
I just like living in big cities. And so living there, I didn't have a problem there. And being black, I was just used to racism and all the shit that got to deal with. Growing up in Chicago, which is one of the worst places to live, to get pulled over when you're black. I mean, it's like you can look, you just look at you could do anything and they'll pull you over if you're black in up north in Illinois, and in Texas is the same way. And I remember, all the little idiosyncrasies. I can walk down the street and a policeman pulls me over and go, "What are you doing?" I'm going for a walk. "What do you do in this neighborhood?" "I live in this neighborhood. That's my house." "Oh," or "I saw you run out the back, your backyard gate," and they stop me and go, "What are you doing?" And I'm going, "I ran out front to turn my water off." And they go, "Well, why did you run out the back gate?" And I'm going, "Because I had it on all afternoon and I forgot about it." It's like, "Let me see your driver's license." I go, "I live here." Well, that kind of shit. I mean, I've lived that all my life. I've never had that problem out here in California. Nobody looks at me sideways. Back in Texas or in Chicago, you're walking down the street and a little white lady will grab her purse and cross the street before you get there. Here in LA, a little white lady with a purse leaves it dangling and looks up at me and says, "Hey, it's a nice day." And I go, "Yes, it is." And we keep on walking. It's like, so Texas, and it is pretty bad. I mean, when I first moved to Texas, when we first moved there in 85, I remember a week before that, 50 miles north of Chicago, a black guy was drugged by his ankles and killed by some people, some white guys, for some, I don't know why, but they killed him. Now, I was going, "Well, here I am in the thick of it." But when you live inside the city, everybody's pretty liberal, because cities are. They're liberal. And Dallas is the same way, because there's some redneck shit outside of Dallas. I had a house in Katy, Texas, a little suburb, and it wasn't, it was at the end of Houston, basically, and then the rest was fields and in another town. And I was probably one of the only 2 or 3 black people that lived out there. So we had to deal with it. A lot of the kids that hung out with me and stuff, people my age, had parents there that weren't racist, would always tell me, "Yeah, my parents don't like black folks and stuff." But when you live in a big city, people just keep to themselves, which I wish we could do that now. People don't want to do that anymore. But I wish that anyone who has any discrepancy and not understanding about it could become that for just a day. I would love to see them do it for just a day, to walk into a store and not feel like you're being followed from the time you get in till the time you leave. People who do understand are people with long hair. Guys with long hair get it. Because long-haired guys, they're not trusted either, man. You cut your hair and all of a sudden people are nice to you. You have long hair and they treat you like shit.